Few musicals have captured hearts quite like Oliver, a film that somehow transformed one of Charles Dickens' darkest novels into a joyous, Oscar-winning spectacle. Directed by Carol Reed, it brought Lionel Bart's beloved stage musical to the big screen in spectacular fashion. But beneath the bright costumes and unforgettable songs lay a production far more complicated and fascinating than audiences ever imagined. And it starts with something most viewers never suspected. The very voice carrying this story forward may not have been quite what it seemed. Number 1. Oliver's voice wasn't his. The boy at the center of Oliver captivated audiences with his angelic voice, but that voice belonged to someone else entirely. Mark Lester, the young actor cast as Oliver Twist, was not actually singing the songs heard on screen. His vocals were dubbed by Kathy Green, the daughter of musical supervisor Johnny Green, and the secret was kept so effectively that most viewers had no idea for years after the film's release. The decision wasn't made out of distrust in Lester's abilities, it was simply practical. Dubbing child performers in large-scale musicals was common during the era, particularly when the vocal demands of the score exceeded what a young actor could reliably deliver across months of filming. The songs required a purity and consistency difficult to guarantee from any child. What makes the illusion so remarkable is how completely convincing it was. Lester's expressive face and physical performance matched the dubbed vocals so naturally that audiences were fully convinced they were watching one seamless portrayal. It wasn't until Lester himself spoke publicly about it years later that the secret finally came to light, a testament to how perfectly the two performances had been blended into one. Number 2. The only G-rated Best Picture. The rating seems almost impossible to believe at first glance. The film depicts a world of pickpockets, criminal gangs, poverty-stricken orphans, and brutal violence. And yet, the Motion Picture Association of America awarded it a G rating, making it suitable for all audiences. More remarkably, it went on to win Best Picture at the Academy Awards, making it the only G-rated film in history to claim that honor. To understand how this happened, it helps to remember that the American rating system was brand new in 1968. The MPAA had only just introduced its classification system that year, replacing the older production code. The early categories were broadly defined, and a G simply meant no content deemed inappropriate for general audiences, a threshold that apparently still allowed for poverty, crime, and on-screen menace. Modern viewers are often genuinely surprised by that classification. The fate of Nancy, the grim conditions of the workhouse, and the threatening presence of Bill Sikes create an atmosphere far darker than most contemporary G-rated productions. Yet, in its era, the musical framing, the absence of explicit content, and the film's overall moral resolution were enough to satisfy the new system. The contradiction between rating and content has only made the movie more fascinating to film historians over the decades. Number 3. The Peter Sellers casting battle. Long before cameras rolled, the road to the finished film was far more complicated than audiences ever knew. The rights to Lionel Bart's stage musical had passed through several hands, and with them came competing visions for how the story should be told on screen. At one point, Peter Sellers was reportedly in serious consideration for the role of Fagin, which would have produced a dramatically different production. Sellers was a dominant force in 1960 cinema, and his interpretation of the character would almost certainly have leaned into broad comedy, rather than the theatrical intensity Ron Moody eventually brought to the role. Producers and studios wrestled over tone, budget, and creative direction for some time before the project settled into its final shape. These negotiations determined not just who would star, but what kind of film it would ultimately become. The casting debate reflects a wider truth about how major productions take shape, often through a series of near misses and abandoned directions the audience never sees. Had Sellers stepped into the role, the entire energy of the film might have shifted beyond recognition. The Fagin that generations came to love was far from inevitable. It emerged through a process of argument, compromise, and fortunate circumstance. Number 4. 2,000 boys auditioned for Oliver. Few casting searches in British film history matched the scale of what producers undertook to find their lead. Over 2,000 boys were reportedly auditioned for the role of Oliver Twist, a number that reflects just how much pressure the filmmakers felt to find exactly the right face, voice, and presence to carry the entire production on young shoulders. The role demanded something rare. Oliver had to appear genuinely vulnerable without becoming irritating, sympathetic without being saccharine, and expressive enough to hold his own against seasoned adult performers in a grand musical. These qualities are difficult to find in any actor, let alone a child. The audition process became a lengthy and exhausting search that spread across Britain. Mark Lester ultimately emerged from that enormous field and secured the part. His quiet, almost ethereal quality, wide eyes, fair features, and a natural stillness on screen gave Oliver exactly the kind of innocent fragility the filmmakers needed. What he may have lacked in vocal range, he more than compensated for with a screen presence that proved genuinely affecting. The search had been enormous, but when the right boy finally walked in, the decision apparently came quickly. Number 5. The producer who never saw it. Every great film carries invisible contributions from people who never lived to see their work on screen. James Wolfe was one of the driving forces behind bringing Oliver to cinema, a seasoned producer with deep roots in British film who had championed the project from its earliest stages. He passed away in March 1966 before a single frame had been shot, leaving the production without one of its key architects. The loss was significant. Wolfe had been instrumental in securing rights, assembling talent, and steering the project toward the big screen. His death forced an immediate reorganization of responsibilities at a critical moment in the film's development, and serious questions arose about whether the production would continue in its intended form. It was his brother, John Wolfe, who stepped forward to ensure the film reached completion. Already an established and respected producer in his own right, he carried the project through its remaining challenges and all the way to its eventual Oscar triumph. The film that audiences celebrated at the 1969 Academy Awards was therefore also a quiet tribute to the brother who had set it all in motion, a man who dedicated years to a project he would never get to see. Number 6. Nancy was discovered on TV. There are moments in casting history where a single television appearance changes everything. Shawnee Wallace had been working as a performer across British stages and variety circuits for years, but it was her appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show in the United States that caught the right people at exactly the right moment. That one performance was enough to put her directly in front of the producers searching for Nancy. The Ed Sullivan Show was one of the most powerful platforms in entertainment during the 1960s, broadcast to millions of American households each week. It served as a launching pad for careers and a validation stage for established talent alike. For a British performer, appearing on it carried significant weight. Wallace brought a warmth and emotional depth to Nancy that proved essential to the film's balance. The character needed to be both resilient and heartbreaking, a woman who understood her circumstances yet remained fiercely loyal and loving. Her performance became one of the most praised elements of the finished picture, earning her a Golden Globe nomination. Number 7. 3 directors nearly made it. The name behind the camera can define a film entirely, and for much of its early development, this production might have carried a very different name in that credit. Brian Forbes and Lewis Gilbert were both linked to the project at various stages, and either could have steered it in a substantially different direction. The director's chair changed hands more than once before Carol Reed finally took his seat. Forbes was a respected figure in British cinema, with a sharp eye for character-driven drama, while Gilbert had demonstrated considerable range across genres. Both would have brought genuine talent to the project, but neither ultimately guided it to the screen. Scheduling conflicts, creative disagreements, and the complicated business of assembling such a large production all played a role in the departures. Reed's arrival proved to be exactly what the film needed. Already the director of classics like The Third Man and Odd Man Out, he brought a deep understanding of atmosphere and performance that gave Oliver its distinctive visual character. Number 8. The contract that delayed filming. The stage version of a hit musical can be worth enormous sums of money, and protecting that income means holding the film world at arm's length for years. When the rights to Lionel Bart's Oliver were acquired for cinema, one crucial condition came attached. Filming could not begin until the London stage production had run its course and closed. The agreement was designed to protect the theater business from being undercut by a major film release. This kind of arrangement was not unusual in the era. Stage producers understood that a high-profile film version could hollow out audience interest in a live performance almost overnight. By delaying production, the theater run was allowed to reach its natural conclusion. The era was shifting, and these kinds of exclusive theater windows were soon to become less common, but the agreement underscored just how valuable film rights to stage hits had become by the mid. Number 9. When the budget suddenly doubled. What began as an ambitious but manageable production quickly grew into something far more expensive than anyone had originally planned. Once sets were designed and musical numbers staged, it became clear that recreating Victorian London at the scale the story demanded would cost considerably more than early estimates suggested. The budget climbed toward approximately $10 million, a staggering figure for a British production of the era. The escalation was driven largely by the physical scale of the production design, enormous street sets requiring skilled craftspeople, vast quantities of materials, and months of construction work. Number 10. The roadshow musical experience. Going to see this film in 1968 was nothing like watching it at home today. Oliver was released as a roadshow production, a prestige format reserved for the biggest films of the era, in which tickets were sold in advance, seats were reserved, and the screening itself was designed to feel like a major theatrical event. Audiences arrived to an overture playing before the images had even begun. The experience included intermissions, printed programs, and exit music, reinforcing the musical's theatrical origins. Number 11. London built inside a studio. Walking through the crowded markets, narrow alleys, and fog-laden streets of Victorian London in this film, it is almost impossible to believe that none of it was real. The entire world seen on screen was constructed from scratch at Shepperton Studios, where production designer John Box and his team built one of the most elaborate studio environments in British film history. Number 12. A crane invented for one shot. The enormous Consider Yourself number, featuring hundreds of performers, demanded a camera movement that no existing equipment could deliver, so a specially constructed crane was built to achieve sweeping overhead shots that captured the full scale of the choreography. Number 13. 80 costumes built a world. Costume designer Phyllis Dalton created approximately 80 distinct costumes, each carefully considered as a piece of visual storytelling reflecting class, character, and environment. Number 14. Fagin's look took 3 artists. Creating the distinctive appearance of Fagin required collaboration between performance and design, with hair, makeup, and costume working together to balance theatricality and realism. Number 15. The continuity genius on set. Filming a musical out of sequence required extraordinary attention to detail, and continuity supervisor Pamela Davies tracked every element, from costume placement to props, ensuring the film remained seamless across months of complex shooting.